Subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified about the highlights of India's smartest podcast, The Ranveer Show. This is TRS Clips. I know for a fact that my case, as in what I am doing with my money currently, is very different from what you usually
Why is
do.
that?
I'm possibly playing one of the most risky games out there with money.
No, so there are two parts, right? One is the risky game that you're playing as an entrepreneur. But then there is are you also playing that risky game with your money?
In terms of whatever I've saved.
Yeah. Outside of the businesses.
Yes and no. One, because the first PMS firm I worked with, as I told you, so a huge chunk of my money is there. Like say about 30% to 40% of my khud ka jeb ka paisa is there. Another 30 to 40% is in the startup ecosystem where I've invested as an angel. And a lot of money has been pumped back into two businesses which have bootstrapped and grown.
Wow.
And we are raising money and we're finding it relatively easy to raise money on both. So that's the hook here. That's why it's not so risky when you look at it, on a macro level.
Yeah.
But I have bootstrapped till this point. Till this point, my financial game was very, very risky.
Right.
And I have very few safe as in if you look at the whole portfolio, there's a very small amount that's completely safe. But I'm also not married and I'm not going to get married for a while.
So I think, you have like what got you here and what will get you further will probably be different, right? And I think the recognition of that when it comes to your money also is very important. You do that in your business, right? What takes a seed stage business from 0 to 1 will not take it from 1 to 100, right?
100%.
Different things work for you. You transform as an entrepreneur. You should also then transform as an investor. So again, and this is something that people do, right? Where people say, yaar, isse mujhe paisa bana tha, so let me do more of that. And that's like doubling down on the one thing that worked. And there are so many luck factors that made that one thing work that now you can't put all your money back into that same thing, right?
I also want to add one angle here. The reason I've been so risky with things is because I kind of caught the right wave of influencer marketing. I was around before it began.
Yeah.
And I was able to sustain as it rose. And I'm at a stage where it's rising even further. Pure influencer marketing. People say, whatever, it's a bubble, it might go away. I don't know about that, but that's the reason I'm playing such a risky game. That I know that even if I lose all the money I've made till now, probably make it back in like a year or two. And I'm okay. Like my risk appetite as a person is really high.
You know what? Actually, it'll be interesting. Like we manage money for a lot of influencers. What is it that you think is changing when it comes to the influencer industry in general? Because that has a bearing on how we'll manage their money, right?
More money is going to come in from brands for sure. We're seeing a lot of... Dude, I've seen it over the years, man. In 2016, we had to explain to brands what influencer marketing means and how it's scientifically efficient for them. Like, how they'll actually get an ROI, etc.
Yeah.
It's reached a point where now it's almost become like a thing. No, it had reached a point where brands were just like throwing in money. Now brands are a little more intelligent about how and where they allocate the influencer marketing budgets. Now, what that means for the influencers is that there's no bullshit now. The people with the fake followers, the fake engagement, they are kind of getting like left behind.
Yeah.
The people who are not reinventing themselves creatively or not putting out content that's creating stickability, it works like the product world. Like you need to keep retaining your users. They're getting left behind. But the ones who've been able to sustain and grow at this point, say 5 years in, 6 years in, they have sort of this proven pedigree in terms of, we've seen 3 generations of content creators, amongst which you have many people who've come and gone. So there must be something right that the ones who've sustained are doing. And for me, sustenance is like you cross the 6-year mark. So if anyone's crossed the 6-year mark, it says that yes, they're capable of reinventing content, they're capable of sustaining themselves financially, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So these guys are going to create this sort of consolidation within like the influencer space, as they called OG creators.
So what I love about what you are doing is the fact that you've taken your personal brand and converted into a business, right? Business, I mean, you've incubated a couple of businesses. So you have the cash flow of a individual brand and plowed it back into the equity of companies, which is your own companies, right? And I think that's the interesting thing that a lot of influencers can learn from, where you've sort of reinvested that money in a way that now it will grow for itself, right? And that's not very common.
But don't you think that's an obvious, like, why do you think other creators don't do that? And I'm not fishing for compliments. I'm trying to understand. See, in retrospect, in my own journey, it was a very obvious next financial step. I, in fact, started doing this even before I started investing in mutual funds.
Let's park the influencer thing on one side and let's take the example of, let's say, Bollywood.
Okay.
Right? There were so many stars at different points of time who made a lot of money in their day, but they ended up in almost poverty, right? What happened during that period? To me, and a lot of it goes back to how you save and how you invest that money, right? A lot of them ended up getting caught up in these chit funds, get rich quick schemes कि यार अच्छा 10 लाख डालो 25 लाख हो जाएगा 50 लाख हो जाएगा etc. And I think, and that's the point, that India didn't have great financial advisors